The moment I heard the words, "Eyes shut, don't open them until I say," my entire life changed. I thought it was just another harmless challenge between friends. I had no idea that when I finally looked in the mirror, the person staring back at me would feel both completely unfamiliar and strangely real. Every choice I made after that pushed me further from the boy I thought I was, and closer to a secret I had spent years trying to hide. If someone had told me this would become the biggest turning point of my life, I would have laughed until it actually happened. Used to think the most dangerous words anyone could ever say to me were, "Open your eyes." I was wrong. The words that truly changed my life were much simpler. Eyes shut. I laughed. I honestly believed it was another harmless challenge, another silly game my friends had invented to embarrass each other. Nothing more. Then came the second instruction. Don't open them until you're ready to stop pretending. My smile disappeared. The room fell silent except for the sound of my own breathing. Every second felt heavier than the last. I could hear hangers sliding across a clothing rack, drawers opening, fabric whispering through the air, but I refused to guess what was happening. I kept asking, "What are you doing?" Nobody answered. Instead, something smooth was gently placed into my hands. It wasn't a prank item. It was a mirror. "Not yet," someone whispered. My fingers tightened around the frame as my heartbeat echoed inside my ears. That mirror had followed me through my entire childhood. It hung in my bedroom while I grew up, silently reflecting every version of myself, every confident smile, every forced laugh, every secret I never dared speak aloud. Now it felt heavier than it ever had before. For years, I'd convinced myself that hiding parts of who I was made life easier. Blend in, stay quiet, never give anyone a reason to ask difficult questions. It was a strategy that worked, at least on the outside. Inside, I was exhausted. Then another voice broke the silence. "This isn't about changing who you are." A pause. "It's about finding out why you've been hiding." Those words landed harder than I expected. My eyes were still closed. My hands were shaking. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what everyone else might see. I was afraid of what I might finally see when I opened my eyes. I took one slow breath, then another, trying to steady the storm inside my chest. My fingers still rested against the frame of the mirror, but I resisted the urge to peek. It wasn't curiosity holding me back anymore. It was fear. "Keep them closed a little longer," Marcus said calmly. For once, there wasn't a trace of teasing in his voice. Marcus had known me since middle school. He was the one person who could tell when I was pretending everything was fine. He never forced conversations, never cornered me with questions. Instead, he waited until I was ready to answer the ones I kept asking myself. "I want you to listen," he continued. "Not to me, to yourself." At first, I heard nothing. Then I noticed my own breathing, the uneven rhythm, the nervous swallow, the quiet voice in my head that had spent years repeating the same sentence. "Don't let anyone know." I hated how familiar those words felt. Growing up, I became an expert at acting. I laughed when everyone else laughed. I wore the clothes everyone expected me to wear. I copied the confidence of other boys even when it never felt natural. Every day was another performance, and eventually I became so good at pretending that I almost convinced myself the performance was real. Almost. Marcus placed something soft across my arms. Fabric. Light. Smooth. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't dramatic. It was simply a neatly folded cardigan in a gentle pastel shade. "Feel it," he said. I ran my fingertips across the sleeve. It reminded me of something I hadn't thought about in years. When I was 8, my grandmother used to knit blankets while humming the same old melody every afternoon. I'd sit beside her, watching bright strands of yarn become something warm enough to comfort anyone who wrapped themselves in it. She once smiled and told me, "The softest things aren't the weakest. They're the ones people hold onto the longest." Back then, I didn't understand. Now, standing there with my eyes still closed, those words returned as clearly as if she were standing beside me. Marcus spoke again. "You've spent years believing strength means never being questioned." Silence. "But maybe strength is surviving the questions." That sentence settled somewhere deep inside me. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about what people at college would say. I wasn't thinking about strangers. I wasn't even thinking about my family. I was thinking about myself. How many decisions had I made simply because I was afraid of disappointing someone? How many dreams had I quietly packed away because they didn't match the image everyone expected? The mirror in my hand suddenly felt different. Not heavier, lighter, as if it wasn't waiting to judge me anymore. As if it was simply waiting for me to be honest. Then Marcus asked one question that stopped every thought racing through my mind. If nobody could laugh. He paused just long enough for the silence to become unbearable. Who would you choose to be? I opened my mouth to answer. Nothing came out, because for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't actually know. The silence after that question stretched longer than I expected. No one rushed to fill it. No one offered me an answer. That was the strange thing about the challenge Marcus had designed. It wasn't about following his instructions. It was about discovering which of my own had been drowned out for years. I lowered the mirror without opening my eyes. I don't know, I admitted quietly. The words felt awkward at first, but also honest. Marcus didn't sound disappointed. If anything, he sounded relieved. That's the first truthful thing you've said all afternoon. A nervous laugh escaped me. I've told the truth before. You've told facts, he replied. There's a difference. That sentence stayed with me. For years I had answered questions with facts. My favorite subject. My plans after college. My hobbies. My grades. The safe answers. The expected answers. But if someone had asked me who I really was beneath all of that, I wasn't sure I could have answered. Okay, Marcus said. You can open your eyes now. I hesitated. Then, slowly, I lifted my eyelids. The room looked exactly the same. The old bookshelf still leaned slightly to one side. The afternoon sunlight still poured through the window. The mirror still rested in my hands. Nothing magical had happened. No impossible transformation. No overnight miracle. Only one thing had changed. The person looking into the mirror wasn't avoiding his own reflection anymore. I studied my expression. The uncertainty was still there. So was the fear. But there was something new I had never noticed before. Curiosity. For the first time, I wasn't asking, how do I make everyone accept me? I was asking, who am I becoming? Marcus walked toward a chair where several neatly folded outfits rested. They weren't flashy or exaggerated. They reflected different styles, different personalities, different ways of expressing yourself. He pointed toward them. I'm not choosing. He pointed toward me. You are. My heartbeat quickened. This suddenly felt much bigger than clothing. Each outfit represented a decision to stop hiding behind expectations. I reached toward one almost instinctively. A simple, elegant look with soft colors and clean lines. Nothing loud. Nothing designed to shock anyone. It simply felt right. As I held it, I expected embarrassment. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not complete confidence. Not certainty. Just peace. Marcus smiled. Interesting choice. You don't think it's strange? I think it's yours. Those 3 words echoed through my mind. It's yours. No one else had picked it. No one had pressured me. No one had dared me. For the first time, the decision belonged entirely to me. Standing there with the mirror still in one hand and the outfit in the other, I realized the mirror had become more than a piece of glass. It had become a question. Every time I looked into it, it asked the same thing. Are you looking at the person everyone expects, or the person you're finally willing to understand? I took a deep breath. The answer wouldn't come all at once, but for the first time, I was ready to begin searching for it. I carried the outfit into the spare room with slow, careful steps, closing the door behind me until the soft click of the latch became the only sound I could hear. For a long moment, I simply stood there. The mirror rested against the wall, reflecting a version of me that looked caught between 2 chapters of the same story. One hand still clung to certainty. The other had already reached for change. I unfolded each piece of clothing with unexpected care. The fabric wasn't important because it was different. It was important because I had chosen it. That single thought changed everything. Growing up, almost every decision about how I presented myself had been automatic. Wear what everyone else wore. Blend into every photograph. Never invite questions. Now, for the first time, I wasn't asking what would help me disappear. I was asking what felt genuine. I changed slowly, almost ceremonially, pausing after every step to let the reality settle in. My heartbeat was still fast, but it no longer sounded like panic. It sounded like anticipation. When I finally turned toward the mirror again, I almost looked away out of habit. Instead, I forced myself to stay. The reflection staring back at me wasn't someone else. It was still me, only quieter, kinder, as though years of pretending had softened just enough for the real person underneath to breathe. I tilted my head. The reflection copied me. I smiled nervously. So did the person in the mirror. For years, that mirror had represented judgment. Every glance had become a checklist of expectations I believed I had to meet. Now it reflected something entirely different. Possibility. A gentle knock interrupted my thoughts. "You okay?" Marcus asked through the door. I looked at my reflection one last time before answering. "Yeah." A pause. "I think I actually am." When I stepped back into the living room, nobody applauded. Nobody laughed. Nobody even commented right away. They simply looked at me with the same ordinary expressions they'd had all afternoon. It surprised me. I'd built entire disasters inside my imagination, expecting every eye to become a spotlight. Instead, the room felt normal. Marcus smiled first. "How do you feel?" I searched for the perfect answer, but couldn't find one. "Lighter." He nodded. "That's enough." Another friend spoke up. "You know what I noticed?" "What?" "You're standing differently." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You walked in without apologizing." I froze. He was right. For years, I'd had a habit of apologizing for everything, for taking space, for speaking too much, for speaking too little, for existing in ways that might inconvenience someone else. Without realizing it, I had walked into the room expecting acceptance instead of rejection. That tiny difference felt enormous. Marcus picked up the mirror from the table and handed it back to me. "You should keep this. I already own it." He smiled. "I know." He tapped the edge of the frame. "But now it means something different." I looked into it again. The reflection hadn't become perfect. It didn't need to. Perfection had never been the goal. Honesty was. As evening settled outside the windows, the sunlight faded into warm shades of orange and gold. The room looked completely ordinary, yet I knew I would remember it for the rest of my life. Not because it was the day I became someone new, but because it was the day I stopped believing I had to hide from the person I'd always been. And every morning after that, whenever I stood in front of the same old mirror, I remembered the words that had once terrified me. Eyes shut. They no longer sounded like an order. They sounded like the beginning of a promise. Close your eyes long enough to silence everyone else's expectations. Then open them only when you're ready to see yourself honestly.